everyone. So I was just thinking, and it suddenly occurred to me, I think I know why the engine is running so bad in this thing. And for those wondering, yes, it's been parked down here ever since I ended that last video. Right, so the thing is, I think the timing on the injection pump is actually way off. Now, I didn't give that any thought when I had the pump off. I just put it back in the exact same position. But it's actually not correct. I think someone else has had that pump off and just put it back in what they thought was the right position. But it's really windy out here, so let's get this thing inside and I'll explain more as we go through it. For those of you who haven't watched the previous videos on this thing, now you can also hear how bad it actually runs. Okay, so here's the thing. I've been thinking for a while what was up with this engine since it's running so bad and it's really rolling a lot in its RPM. And that can really only be something with the fuel system. And I've been thinking if it was something I did when I had the pump off, but I couldn't really pinpoint what that would be because I just put everything back where it was. And then it hit me like, yeah, I put it back as it was, but who knows if it was in the right place to begin with. And then I remembered, before I took the pump off, I turned the engine to top dead center on cylinder 1 going into the ignition stroke. Now I did that because that's just a really good 0 point to have the engine at, and it's easy to go back to that if you have to adjust something. But then I also remembered that once I took off the pump and had to find the marking on that was already lined up. And that's actually not correct, because the marking on the pump, that shows you the pump is just about to start firing on cylinder 1. And that's not supposed to happen at top dead center. It has to happen a good time before that. On this engine, I think it's something like 25 degrees before top dead center. So if that's the case, that this thing is just way off on its timing, that would explain why it's running so bad. And would also explain why it's smoking so much, because it just doesn't have time to finish its combustion. So a lot of that unburned fuel is just going straight into the exhaust. Let's get back in there and get that pump off and try to correct that. See what happens. Okay, so now I'm about ready to pull that pump off again. But before I do, I want to put the engine back at that top dead center position just to try and confirm what I'm thinking. So I'll be looking at the valve train to figure out which stroke I'm at, and then I'm gonna be looking at the, can't really see that, it's too dark, but I'll be looking at the crankshaft pulley down here to see the precise degrees when we get close. So we just want the valves to be overlapping on cylinder 4. That's right around there. Then we'll just put it at that OT mark right there. That's top dead center. So now that we have that set, let's get that pump off and see where the mark is on that. Alright, so here we have it, and yeah, that's exactly what I remembered. The mark is already lined up on this, but we don't want it to be when the engine is at top dead center. But we're going to leave the pump as it is because that is correct. We just have to move the engine back to 25 degrees before top dead center and then reinstall this. So I just went and did a bit of reading, and it's actually 26 degrees before top on these engines. But there is no 26 degree mark, so I'm just gonna put it right next to the 25 mark and call that good enough. So I'm just gonna go a little bit past the mark so that we can take up all the slack going back the right way. And we'll stop right before that 25 mark. There. Let's call that 26 degrees before. Alright, so let's get this pump back in, put everything back together, and see what happens. Right, so that should be everything back together. So let's go ahead and try and fire this thing up and see how it runs now. Now I did try to bleed it of air as much as I could, but there may still be some in there since we had the pump off. So it may struggle to start, but let's just give it a go. Alright, let's give this a go. That was quick. Right, let's just try again. It's running so much better now. Still smoking a little, but that's really to be expected. There's still a lot of diesel in the exhaust system, and the injectors are still terrible, but this was a massive improvement. Right, let's go for a ride. Right, so this thing is running a whole lot better now, and it almost stopped smoking entirely as well. And it also starts much easier now. That is really nice. But when I first took that pump off, it didn't actually look like it had ever been off. So that's also why I didn't really suspect any of this in the first place. But whoever had it off, it would have been a really long time ago that someone put it in that position. It was definitely not the guys before me. So that got me thinking, maybe this is the reason that this thing was abandoned in the first place. Could be that someone had the pump off for whatever reason, and they put it back in what they thought was the right position, and they just couldn't get the thing to run right and eventually just gave up on it. Of course, I don't know this, but I find it kind of funny to try and unravel why this thing is the way that it is. Anyway, that just means that the engine in this thing is probably not as bad as I initially thought it was. I mean, it's obviously still not great, but it does open up the possibility that we can keep that original engine and maybe just try and crank some more power out of it. Because it would be nice, even though we're turning this thing into like an off-roader, I would still like to preserve as much of the Unimog as possible. Because that's really the fun part. I mean, if we were to modify and replace everything, we could have started out with any other vehicle. So I couldn't help but jump right in and fix that now that I got to thinking about it, but now I am going to put this away for a while and get back to finishing the other 421, which is what I'm actually supposed to be working on. So thanks for watching this one, and we'll see ya.